Welcome to Talent Bus, where I talk with SaaS companies on how they are doing their talent acquisition. In today's episodes, I'm talking with Timo, founder of Flowhaven, and we are talking the 6 learnings from their journey. And let's start the episode from the fact that don't go after Ronaldo's in the beginning.
You can definitely have the best join you. For what I kind of mean with, don't go straight after Ronaldo's or Messi's of the business world. I mean more like, looking, just with their career experience, seniority, that kind of stuff, rather than, you can have the best person that is younger, that is actually best in that role and will be the best in that role forever, right now. But at the same time, what I usually see with many, younger entrepreneurs, or a lot of with startup entrepreneurs, same as myself used to be, is that you try to first into your team, you have a small team, you maybe don't yet have, proven market or proven, even product yet, the product market fit maybe isn't there. And you try to go after like, hey, let's find the best, sales leader, or let's find the best, technology leader we can find. And initially that person wouldn't take the risk. If they see that it's only a small team and they have a lot of options to choose from. And even if they take the risk, it might be with a cost that you realize later down the line that the cost was a lot, whether it was equity or whether it was, a lot of burn to your company, on a monthly basis. And that can take a toll. And what I actually, looking back now, what I recommend, it takes time to build a great company. So you start to building a great team. You start putting, those great players in place that once you want to get that, Ronaldo, famous business person that is well known to be a, very good at what they do, has a proven track record of what they've done in their previous roles, then you can go after them because they see that, wow, there's already great players in that team. They have a chance to actually win. They have a chance to be successful. And in that way, they don't feel that they're taking that big of a personal risk, rather than if you would have, hired them a couple of years earlier when, you didn't yet have that team, in place, or your team might be already in place. That is fantastic, but they just haven't yet proven that they are an awesome team.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one thing that I've noticed lately with talking with a lot of SaaS founders, for example, marketing team, like a lot of people want to have super experienced CMO in the beginning.
Yeah.
Before having a team in place. And I think that's a challenge because you need kind of some hands-on people first to do this stuff. And then maybe later on when you have team growing, then you might need the CMO. Same goes with the head of sales. I think a lot of companies still kind of first hire the head of sales and then the sales team. I personally think that's the wrong way to go.
Yeah. And I think like it's always easier and cheaper for a company if junior makes the mistakes. But at the same time, with a very senior hire, you can avoid some of those common mistakes. But what I have found out is that, especially in the very first years of a company, those mistakes are usually company based rather than market or, the industry based. Those usually come later down the line. So in the beginning, even, when you're just trying to find the first deals out there, even junior or you yourself as a founder can do that yourself.
Yeah. Then let's go to the second learning. So no one invests in the first days. Can you share what you mean by this?
Yeah, this is so when we did Flowhaven, the first rounds, and even before we kind of started looking at funding rounds, and I see this a lot when I'm mentoring a younger startups, is that it's like, it is the idea that, if, I have a great company, I believe in this as a founder. Of course, people are going to invest into this straight away. But what is often, that founders don't realize that investors, they're humans also. There's a lot of competition with great companies. Every founder thinks that their company is the best, which they should think also. But they do. And and so it's not enough that you just think that somebody is ready to leap on your case on the first meeting or the first try. So usually it takes longer to build that personal trust, personal relationship. It's with everything, right? So when if you go see a house, you want to buy it. Usually you want to see it a few times. It's a big investment for yourself. So I think it's exactly the same. But sometimes there are cases where of course people do invest on the first date, and that might be great, but it is rare. And it is especially looking at probably the future of how the market is behaving right now. You got to be really good at creating those personal, relationships with investors, especially if you're an early stage startup, and that's really important. And I wish I would have realized that maybe earlier in my career would have helped things.
Yeah, I think the same goes for finding a talent for your company. So when you are early, or let's take us as an example, we're super early. There are a lot of talents we would like to join us at some day, but I know that they're not that crazy that they would leave their current place and come work in a startup super early. A lot of risk. But I think same goes to over there, that you need to be building relations with them already. We are doing that one. Kind of basically, we are already discussing with the people who I know that we can't most likely hire before 2024. So more than a year from now. But I think that is kind of super crucial to start early on building those relationships.
Yeah, exactly. And especially if you are, young founder or, early stages of your company as a founder, I really recommend to keep in touch, especially with those that you feel that there's great potential as a partner, to partner with this investor. They have similar portfolio companies. They have had success with those portfolio companies. They could actually really help you, whether it's their network, industry expertise, whatever that may be. Then it's really important to keep that relationship going, because it you never know what's going to happen in future. Maybe it's not even this round that it happens. Maybe it's later on that it happens. But at the same time, it's great to have those kind of partnerships around, because it is. I think people also forget that, like, sometimes that these great investment companies, they're not there only to give money. They're actually there to make great companies. And if you have these people that you have a relationship with them, whether they are your investors or not, great assets for help. Just to ask, hey, I would need, guidance on this, or could you help me with this? Can you send me some material about sales or marketing or something like that? And usually they help because it's in their interest also. They want to keep that relationship with founders. So I think sometimes, we tend to forget that they are humans also.
Yeah, exactly. But from humans to our third learning, persons are persons, not titles. I think this is something that a lot of people are making mistakes, me included. For example, when I look at people on LinkedIn, it's super easy to check out the title and see, like, oh, hey, this is a good person, or they are good in what they are doing, just because of the title. And with the title, you can kind of change a lot of things. But can you share your story on this?
Yeah, so when we started Flowhaven, I was basically living at Kalle's, my co-founder's couch, and we started in Helsinki, Finland. And then, the idea was like, let's go after the biggest entertainment companies out there, biggest film studios in Hollywood and all that. And that's a crazy idea. Like, it's almost such a crazy idea that makes no sense. And what was the most surprising for me was that when you had those first meetings, I think our first kind of expo was E3, which is a gaming expo in Los Angeles. And we saved every little penny as a students and went there. I think this was 2016. Yeah. And the first meetings we had were with some of the biggest, gaming companies and their licensing executives. And I was, very nervous. I've never met with, international company executives. I've only been doing business here in Finland mostly. But what was very surprising was that I realized that they're just humans, they're just persons. And when you actually realize that, yeah, they have a big title, they have a lot of experience, they're, great at what they do, but at the same time, there's a human being behind those titles. There's much more important than anything they have done in their career, whether it's their family, whether it's what they're interested or what they want to achieve in their lives. And that's, I think, really important. And personally now, like looking back all these years and also right now, what I really value in my own life, when it comes to work is that having meeting with those type of persons, just that don't look at the title, don't look at like, hey, what can I get out of this person? What are the opportunities that this person give me? But more like, hey, this is a good human being. I love spending time with this person, or, we have really good conversations. They might, be, very knowledgeable about something you're not, or, you just share interest, say similar interests. And I really enjoy that. My favorite things nowadays is that if I go meet customers or happen to meet customers somewhere around the world, it's to, have real human contact with those customers, not just talking about like business stuff, but actually like also personal stuff. And I think, with COVID and everything happened, I just think we kind of lost part of that. So I hope, the part of that business comes back. And I sometimes think that, we are very proud of how efficient we are, and we want to be more and more efficient every year and all the time. I think that might be, that might have a negative side, that we don't actually stop and talk to each other like humans. And that's really important, especially if you're a young founder.
Yeah. I think it's important to kind of make sure you make time for that one. And for example, let's say having one-to-one discussion with your team members, it's super, super easy just to go through the business stuff, the numbers, the goals, all that. And you really need to be making time for the other stuff as well as the personal stuff. What is going on with the life over there? And I think in kind of real life, when you are meeting people, for some reason, at least for me, it's easier to do it over there rather than kind of over Teams or Google Hangouts meeting. And I think that's a challenge, that you really need to focus on that one and not just be like, how are things, and then not listening to the answer that the other person is saying.
Yeah. And I admit I'm not the best at that, especially like online, because sometimes, when you're remote working and you see that the other person on the other side of the line isn't really, they don't have the best day, I know that I should send them a message afterwards that, hey, how are you doing? Was everything okay? But, sometimes you just forget to do that, and you never should. We should always remember that, we're humans after all. That's the main point. We're here. Businesses, they come and go, but people stay.
Yeah, exactly. Then learning number 4, and this comes down to the fact that actually most SaaS companies like you are growing globally. So you have multiple markets, and kind of when opening up new markets, market situation might be a bit different. And the learning basically is that you need to prove your local product market fit before expanding on that market, before hiring people on that market. So can you share what happened in your situation over there?
Yeah. So again, like I think we're a rare company, because when we started Flowhaven, we went straight away global. We knew that there weren't enough companies doing brand licensing business in Finland. There's like maybe 5 of them that, justifies a brand licensing system or software. But yeah, we went straight away. Now we're working actually all the continents except Antarctica. They don't do really licensing there yet. I hope someday they are doing merch. But when we start, especially like US, for example, it's one of those markets that you can spend millions of dollars without achieving anything, just by having a office, having people there, and, not yet having customers. So what I usually recommend is that prove the market's opportunity by first signing those customers, then putting those offices in place, then having those, costs that you're having there. And that's, it's very normal that sometimes this goes against, the kind of fast growth, time, kind of element that, founders are usually, enforced to do. But even still, usually it's so much easier to scale when you have, that you have actually paying customers that are proving that they find value from this product. And it is not often the legal things that, that's one thing. Of course, the legal things come in the way where there's like a healthcare product, for example. But for us, it's more what we see is cultural things. How do we use this product? What's the UX experience? Like if you go, US, somebody likes pressing buttons on the right side. When you go Asia, that might be totally different. How we share information, it's very different in different continents. Even we have difference here in Nordics, versus Middle Europe versus South Europe. And all these kind of things that sometimes you don't know even what to anticipate when you're scaling. And especially if you're in an industry like we are, that we are kind of creating our own category, it's very challenging because you have no benchmark points. You don't really have anybody who has done this before on this level. And that's very challenging because you can't anticipate everything. So sometimes you gotta thread carefully, even though fast. So then, that tip and that's a good learning that I got, is that keep the costs down until you have actually proven market.
Yeah. Yeah. What are the biggest challenges on kind of managing a remote team in kind of multiple locations? Like, has it been a challenge to kind of align with the culture and kind of have the team spirit in place? And what kind of challenges do you have there?
Extremely challenging, especially if you don't have any location that's like, people actually gather once a week or once a month. It is very challenging. And the people who join that kind of company and they join remotely, they usually understand that this is going to be and you should make them very, very clear this is a remote position. But at the same time, you just gotta, do as you can. So we, for example, have office hours sometimes that people can actually just hop on a call certain times of a week to talk with each other. We always have once a week global team meeting where everybody in the company comes together just for half an hour, just to see like how we're doing, how's the business doing, but also what's the kind of overall vibe right now. Then also I think one thing is really important is that even though it's a cost, but you have to have people meeting each other, whether it's once half a year, once a year, whatever it may be. But, we're still humans after all that, we still have to meet each other. So I don't think any company yet has done perfect execution with remote work. But yeah, culture is very different when you're working remotely. It is, and I'm a very, I love working with people, when you're at the office. So for me, it's not been easy working remotely.
Yeah, for sure. And even though kind of it is a cost on bringing people together, but I see, at least personally, it more as an investment. So even though, like, as a company of yours, I see it does cost a lot of money to bring people in together. But if with that one, you can, let's say, make sure that you have less employee churn, or you can make sure that your current employees are referring you to other potential people, or you make sure that people are more efficient because you are organizing something like that, it actually becomes a good use of money, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that is really important that people, that's exactly something how it goes, is those exactly things that you said, like people coming together, being much more motivated, just having a chance to catch up. Also, it takes away the kind of risk of people not understanding each other in a sense that, hey, I have a bad, if I have a rough time in my life, for example, it's so much easier to see that face to face, to talk through those things face to face. So you understand to give much more space, for example, and be much, having more patience, with an individual if that happens. But I think one thing is that we've noticed that it's definitely an investment, and where it really comes clear is that those cross-team collaborations, they don't happen unless, you have these kind of meetings. And because those kind of things it's very hard to enforce those on a remote work because you don't often know what those, blocks are, or kind of, is there even speed bumps? And usually when you get good people together on the same room, suddenly magic starts to happen and those kind of knots starts to open up. And that's a big thing. So what I actually think is the biggest value for having people meet, whether it's half a year, once a year, is actually the cross team collaboration. And usually for the bigger you are, the more those knots and obstacles actually hurt you. And especially as a leader in your company, it's very hard if you don't know about those. And in remote work, you usually don't know about those because nobody knows about those until they get to the same room and talk to each other and realize, wow, we were actually struggling with the same issue. We thought it's about you. No, we thought it's about your team. And then, then both parties understand that actually, hey, let's just fix this. This is a big problem for both of us.
That's a super interesting idea, actually. I haven't thought about that one. Good learning. Then when a company is growing, now we go to our fifth learning. It's kind of when you are growing, you need to be, of course, kind of forecasting the growth. Investors are interested. Hey, what are you expecting for the next year? And one of the learnings here is that don't forecast magic. And kind of typically things do take more time than you expect. So can you share some stories on that?
Yeah, so I years ago, I used to forecast crazy numbers, especially on the sales side, because I thought, yeah, they're going to be achieved. And sometimes even I don't know if I even personally believed them sometimes myself, but it was just something that, you were yeah, we got to have 2 million pipe, or we got to have 6 million AR happening this year, or whatever those may be. But I think it's always good to be honest, especially whether it's, of course, you always have to be honest with, internally in your company, but also when you're talking to new possible investors, new kind of, partners or new employees coming in. I think it's always honesty always wins, because, nobody wants to, believe in a lie. Nobody wants to join a company that is based on a lie. So you should be as honest as possible, as much as you can, of course. And I usually see this when a company is going through a tough time, and there's always a tough time for any company, during their lifetime, is that there becomes this human moment where you hear somebody saying yeah, but this is going to be our wild card. This is going to save the company. And I've noticed that every time that comes up, I already now do it so that, yeah, that's not going to happen. Just because I've seen it so many times that wild card, there's 1 promille, 1% chance that will happen. But at the same time, let's not bet our company's future on that wild card. Great that if that works, we can put a little bit of resources on that, but, we're not going to bet on the whole company's history. And that's often the desperation that kind of, that companies do that. And so there's no magic. And it takes a long time to build a great company. And it's very surprising even for me, that, or anyone, to be honest, I think as an entrepreneur, is that how long it actually takes, because you think that it's going to be next year or next year or next year, but you start to realize, and when you start to have few years, you're doing that next year, you start to think about, how many years do I still have that actually starts to, become, a great company or the next big thing. So it's always, you always need to be growing. You always need to be learning more, I think, as a company. And yeah, it's just hard work. And yeah, there is no I would say silver bullet or, magical recipe that works.
Yeah. I've personally noticed that kind of when we launched Talent Base now 4 months ago, and we set up some clear goals for us, and it's been kind of super difficult in a way that some of those goals we are way over those already, way over, and then some goals we are not even close to them. And because in the first time it's really about guessing a lot. You have never set goals like that. You're never been in the same situation launching something completely new. And then you set up some goals, kind of forecasting, but of course we don't have any kind of outside investors, so it's a bit easier because no one is basically responsible for everyone if we don't hit those other than ourselves. But yeah, I think it's been a big learning journey on on those ones.
There is that. I might actually counter that with, I think it's harder sometimes to do things on your or forecast things on your own or put your goals on your own if you don't have somebody kind of coaching and pushing you forward. I personally love our investors and kind of how much they push, and it's all in good spirit. It's never, they're on your side. They want to make the company successful. So that's why they chose us. I think I want to say we chose them, but they chose us. That's the truth. But that's what they bring to the table. They always say that you need to reach this point. I'm like, okay, let's go. Game's on. That's great that somebody shows me the point to get to. And I know that many entrepreneurs I talk to, they are afraid of that, hey, somebody will be pushing me. But that's what makes you great. You shouldn't be afraid of that. I think what makes me frustrated is if I'm kind of stumbling in the dark myself and trying to figure things out and nobody has an answer for me. I'm ready to do the hard work, but I don't want to do work that is pointless. That really makes me angry, and disappointed if 3 months after I'd done something and reached that goal. And then I personally realized this goal meant nothing. Now that I have reached it, this had zero effect on anything that matters. And that has happened many times, that I've done a massive work and then I've realized whether it's weeks, days, months later that, yeah, I could have just skipped this work and do something else with my time. So, but learnings.
Yeah. But yeah, I kind of agree on that one. If I kind of compare the current situation where I basically don't need to be reporting for everyone. And then, for example, my last position as a head of sales, where I was reporting to our CEO, and there were clear goals. You kind of feel more pressure, yes, but at least for me as a person, it kind of makes me do things even harder, and I have way better performance actually on that one. So I personally don't see it as a bad thing. For example, having an investor, I've been actually thinking should we have investors just because of the fact that they would kind of set up goals together with us, and then I would be responsible for them? Would it even make better results for us?
So some HR director somewhere would say you're coachable. That's it.
Exactly. But hey, let's go to the last learning. Number 6. You should always come last as a founder.
Yeah, I think this is Gary Vee's one of those Gary Vee's wise words that don't expect the same, from your employees than you do as from yourself as a founder or entrepreneur. And that's really true. And I have fallen into this pit a few times myself, that I realized that I've actually demanded from my team to work as hard as, I do, or care as much as I do. And that's not fair. It's, if you're not giving them the option, even they might have a small equity, they don't have the same amount as you. And so sometimes, I have personally forgot that that's not the case. So actually I should put always, more work in, more hours in, than anybody else in the company. That won't change. The bigger the companies, the more, that should happen. Of course, you want to make sure that you don't have that founder syndrome, that you're able to let things go also from your table. But what I mean with hard work is that, you should be always coming to work, in a sense, smiling and being supportive and listening and not complaining yourself about things and, bringing that kind of negative attitude into the workplace. And sometimes I felt that, sometimes you feel as an entrepreneur, you feel alone, right? Even though you have co-founders and people around you, and a lot of employees, you feel really alone. But then those are the things you need to really solve, whether it's your therapist or whether it's, your own life or, whatever it may be. You need to solve those, problems and challenges within yourself, because your employees cannot be in charge of that. You cannot put that, emotional pressure on them. And sometimes you see this, when company kind of going gets tough, you sometimes see that the, leaders of the company, they start to kind of shouting and losing their nerve. And I just that's, in my opinion, not the way to go. I think even in the toughest times, you should be the beacon of hope, beacon of that there's still something, great is going to happen.
Yeah, I agree on that one. I remember when we were planning our business, and then I kind of wrote down potential risk points for us. I actually wrote that exact same thing down, that I expect a lot from me and I expect a lot from others. And like, how do I make sure that I don't expect too much from our employees? Because you cannot just expect the same amount of work from them. But at the same time, kind of, you mentioned there that as a founder, you should be kind of putting in a lot of work. But I've been actually kind of trying to go personally a bit against that one. And the main reason for that one is that, like, I've heard way too many stories about founders who have overworked or having a burnout. And I actually decided when we launched the business that I won't be basically working any week more than 40 hours. And I try to do less than that one. And for example, I keep most of the Fridays off. And for example, 2 weeks ago, I had a Friday off. I just sent the team message on Slack that, hey, I will be having a day off. And hey, try to finish your stuff early so you can just end up the Friday early as well. So I think it's kind of important to show kind of work-life balance as a founder to your team as well.
Samuli, when you're off from work, do you think work? Do you think how the company will be better? How the company will, what to do next? What are the crazy ideas you have? Do you do that?
It's a good question. It depends what I'm doing. If I am, let's say, laying on the beach or on a sofa, then most likely yes. But for me, the best way to get out from work is do some sports. So whether I'm playing disc golf or paddle or badminton, then I won't be thinking any work-related stuff. But if it's just me and my thoughts, then I would say like 80% of time, my thoughts will go to the business and how to make it better.
And that's exactly where you are still working, which is good. But it's also really important to have those downtimes, 100%. One of my mentors used to say, that helped us to grow Flowhaven, used to say that he has a famous saying that, being an entrepreneur and building a company is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So you really need to be careful of that. And yeah, like as an entrepreneur, it's never also about, I think, the amount of hours you work, you put into the work. It actually is like you do the right things. So sometimes a person exactly like an entrepreneur who works only 4 times a day and does the right things, can be much more efficient than, somebody who's working all the time and doesn't take a break and can't get the perspective. But sometimes also there is the, how would I say, the reality sometimes in things that, there are deadlines, when things start to grow, there are things to handle in time, some sudden movements of the company, then you really need to show up as an entrepreneur and, do those long days, long nights. And because you can't demand anybody else to do that. And then your option is like, hey, do I let my company have a hit or go down, or do I take the personal responsibility to take care of this matter? And, that I'm in charge of the company and I want to do this for my employees. And you got to be really careful there, because that sense of duty is really important, but it can also, make you burn out. So you got to make sure that, you're in charge of yourself, but also that you have people looking out for you. Mental health challenges are a big thing with entrepreneurs, and you should be, you should have always somebody to talk to. And it's really important, whether you are in the beginning or whether you are, later stage. Sometimes it's even more important in the beginning, because you make usually much more mistakes in the beginning because you're learning, this is a new company, it's an innovative thing that you're doing. Nobody has the answers. If they would have the answers, they would have done it themselves. So yeah, you really gotta make sure that, it's a marathon, not a sprint. I think that kind of is the best way to put it.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully you got a lot of good ideas about SaaS talent acquisition. If you enjoyed the episode, feel free to share it on your social so others can hear it too. And if you have a topic in mind that you would like me to cover in this podcast, share it with me as well. I'm Samuli, CEO and co-founder in TalentBee, where we help fast-growing SaaS companies in their talent acquisition. Make sure to follow us, make sure to follow this podcast, and have an awesome week. Bye-bye.